What's up my loves? My name is Paige, this is Paige with the Page, and today we're going to be doing 28 books for 28 years. This video is going live, it's my birthday, and I was really struggling to come up with an idea of what I wanted to do for my birthday video. And I was talking with Amy from A-Star Reads, and she was like, well, why don't you pick a book that you pick like 28 books for the 28 years you've been alive? And I took it one step further. So I've gone and found books that were published in 1995 to 2023 to talk about that have influenced my reading life in some way, shape or form. It could be a little minor thing, it could be a major thing. I just want to talk about these books because they've all hit me in a different way. Most of them are positive. I just want to talk through these 28 books. In 1995, when I was born, we had Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb published, and whilst I didn't actually love this book as itself, it introduced me to the world of Robin Hobb, and they are now one of my favourite authors. I'm having so much fun working my way through the realm of the Elderlings, so this is the Kickstarter, and whilst for me it was a 4-star, not a 5-star, at the time that I read it, I also wasn't a high epic fantasy reader, so I had a lot of growing to do in my reading life, and now I can appreciate her stories so much more because of it. In 1996, we have Realm of the Gods by Tamora Pierce. This is the conclusion to a quartet that I absolutely love by Tamora Pierce, who's one of my favourite authors. These are following my favourite characters, and I really loved this whole arc in the Tortell universe, and so this conclusion was epic. Next up, we have just a really cute one, and that's The Melancholy Death of Oyster Boy and Other Stories by Tim Burton. This is just random little stories with adorable illustrations. And honestly, I just thought it was super cute. It's fun, and you can always fly through it and have a good time. For 1998, I chose The Night is for Hunting by John Marsden. This is the 6th book in the Tomorrow When the War Began series, which I read as a teenager, and this book just hit harder. I feel like the emotional maturity of the characters really ramped up, and they're in a position that makes them sort of think about the whole situation a little bit deeper, and I just really enjoyed it, and it definitely hit home. So this one has a story. For 1999, I've gone with The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. Not because of the book itself, but this particular edition, I went to go see a band and their merch got held up at customs, so they didn't have anything. They did post it out for us. So I got the book signed by Hailstorm, and yeah, it was the only thing I had on me. The irony of it being called The Bad Beginning, and the drummer and I did have an excellent conversation, and then during the concert he like pointed at me, and then afterwards we met up again and they were like, did you see? I was like, yes! So it's just very wholesome and just gives me a lot of joy whenever I think about this. For the year 2000, I have The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot, and this is because sometimes the movies are better than the books. I enjoyed the book, but I love the movies with my entire heart and soul, and this was just one where I noticed that, you know, it really does change things. For 2001, we have The Rainbow Boys by Alex Sanchez, and this was my gay awakening as a teenager, like realizing that there were queer people that exist in fiction. And so I fell down a rabbit hole with this series, absolutely binged it. I don't know if I reread it, if it would still hold such a nostalgic place in my heart, but currently it's in there as one that I definitely really needed as a teenager. For 2002, we have The Full Metal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa, and I love these characters. Everything about it is so wholesome, and I think it was the second, maybe third manga series that I really fell head over heels for, and just absolutely keep devouring it and love every second that I'm in the world. For 2003, I have City of Ember by Jean Drapeau, and this was one that I just remember binge reading the series. I absolutely loved it and fell in love with the adaptation. I just had such a good time with it, and it really caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, and I literally went out and borrowed the remaining 3 in the quartet and read them back to back to back because I was obsessed with getting through them and just loving it. For 2004, we have Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. Just having the correlation of the chunk along and getting to read such a beautifully written book just fills me with joy. I was slightly apprehensive after realizing that Piranesi was one that I had enjoyed but not really loved. I just had more reflection on it, so I was nervous going in, and the fact that it just blew me away and hit all the right notes for me was spot on. For 2005, we have The Penelope by Margaret Atwood. I read this in high school and it was one of the very few, and by few I mean I think there were 3 books I actually enjoyed reading and analysing in high school. I loved reading this. Absolutely, hands down, it was so captivating for me and I'm so excited to reread it. It just hits the right notes for what I wanted, and learning my reading tastes in high school and seeing something a little bit more advanced and starting to dabble into ancient history in an actually engaging way. So that was a very nice introduction. 2006 brings I Tell You I'd Love You But Then I'd Have to Kill You by Ali Carter, which was the first in the Gallagher Girls series, and I was obsessed with this book. I think the first 2, I don't think I continued on with the rest of the series, but this, my life goal was to be a spy. I wanted to be these boss ass bitches, and it was fundamental for me. Actually, I probably read it as it came out, and that's why I didn't continue on with the series, because it would have been 2006 that I was reading this in year 6. So yeah, it defined my personality. You know, those books that you get. We'll have a few more coming up that you'll be a bit more familiar with, but yeah, it was my entire heart and soul, and I'm not sure why I didn't become a spy. Would have been a good life choice. 2007 brings The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Mostly, I love how beautiful this is, but it's something that Ash and I can just deep dive into because he loves it with his entire being, and seeing him be so passionate about it really fills me with joy. I might be sitting there going, I can't remember that aspect of it, but sure. And then he'll elaborate and things trickle back, and having that conversation with him is just so lovely. And also, it's a beautifully written book, so definitely enjoyed that. For 2008, I unhauled my editions, and I have been waiting to collect the district versions of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Basically, this got me back into reading. I find that they were very easy to read and watch, and I just had a good time with it. It really sparked that love of reading which I had been missing. Yeah, I had a good time with it. I definitely did read it later, not when it was originally published, but that was what I needed to kickstart my reading again, so very much appreciate it. 2009 was Horns by Joe Hill, and story time again. I was dating a Christian when I decided to pick this up, and I loved it. It was exactly what I needed at that moment to remind me that the life choices I make have consequences, and knowing in my heart that that relationship wasn't going to work because I'm not religious just hit when reading this. There's a section of it called the Fire Sermon, and so many points of it just hit so poignantly to me that I was not okay. And yes, so it was a time in my life where choices were made, and I'm just very happy I picked this up because it reaffirmed in myself beliefs that I'd been doubting and should have known better, but nice to have it be told and discussed. So they weren't a bad partner, it was just not the right relationship for my life. For 2010, I have Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, and this is evidence that I don't hate all of Cassandra Clare's works. I was reading the Model Instruments last year for Bookstara and not having a great time, but when I started the Infernal Devices series, I really found what I was looking for and what I had wanted from Cassie Clare. So it gave me hope, it's intrigued me enough to wait a long period of time but eventually continue on with her world. Props to it. 2011 brought me Daughter of Spoken Bone by Laini Taylor, and this is just introduction to one of my favorite authors of all time, one of my favorite series of all time. Just everything about it is perfection to me, and I love it with my entire heart and being. I'm very appreciative for this book, and again, it was one that kept the momentum going, and I was just reading so many awesome books, and this just nails what is a 5-star read for me. For 2012, we have Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and this is because it was the start of Lunar Along, which consequently became Bookstara, which I'm now an active host for, and I love Amy and Danielle and being able to be a part of this group and have such interesting discussions, and so I'm really thankful that this book introduced me to them and provided the opportunity for heavy discussion and inclusion in a little book club. So that was really wholesome, and I'm very thankful to it. It's also a really fucking good book and really highlighted the fact that I do love retellings. For 2003, we have The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This one, I enjoyed the book, like I really did. But the main selling point for me was it was the first time I'd seen my name as a protagonist's name. I know that there are plenty of books out there that have Paige, but this was my first instance of picking up a book, seeing my name and going, oh my god, and that just meant a lot. So For 2014, we have Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Again, introducing to a favorite author of all time, just perfection, seeing diversity and representation, that it was so unique, and just the story itself was so much fun. A lot of these are just introductions to favorite authors because they sit in my heart as favorites for authors, for series, just books as a whole, and it really continues to fuel my desire to read and find that same feeling. And I'm very much appreciative that I've gotten to read 5 different works, including this one, and this was what started it all. For 2015, we have Nimona by Norrell Stevenson, and this is just perfection in a graphic novel form. I absolutely adored it and had so much fun with the story. It's just, like a lot of these, it just perfectly sets out to do what it needs to do, and that's why I love it so much. And so yeah, that's that one. For 2016, we have When We Collided by Emery Lord, and this was the first time that I really saw myself represented in a book and made me really take my mental health seriously. Now, the main protagonist, Vivi, has a disorder that I don't have, but there were a lot of parallels in her actions and my actions at the time, and so I was questioning whether maybe I was going down this path, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Mine's not really cyclical in nature, it's situational. So I've realized that, and I'm fine with it. I'm just happy that I took my mental health seriously enough to actually go talk to someone about it and make progress to understand who I am and why I do what I do and how my brain functions, and to make sure that I have coping strategies for when it doesn't want to do the things. So I'm very thankful to this book, and I still really love it. I don't think I'm ever going to reread it because I don't think it will live up to when I read it and how I read it at the time I needed to, but for me it just holds a really strong place in my heart. For 2017, we have If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. This is basically because I thought I hated Shakespeare. I don't really enjoy reading a lot of Shakespeare, and I don't really like seeing it in other texts, but this I loved, and it's very Shakespearean heavy, like Shakespearean elite school setting, that level of Shakespeare. It surprised me, and it made me really feel determined that I will be able to find Shakespearean references that I love, and that I don't have to be turned off if I hear it as a selling point. And there are other books that I have not read, mostly romances, that use the Shakespearean plays as parallels, and I just never went towards them because I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna like that. This is not a romance, but I feel like I need to be able to give Shakespeare a chance if I can enjoy this as much as I did, because it is one of my all-time favorites. Now we're getting into the territory that y'all will be very familiar with, so get comfortable. For 2018, I've gone with A Heart and the Body in the World by Deb Coletti. This broke me on so many levels. Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake, also 2018. Very hard to pick, but I had to go with this overall. This is dealing with seriously hard topic matter, and the way that it's portrayed is done excellently. Our protagonist is traveling across America. They've just decided after a traumatic incident that they just need to run and get away. The way that the flashbacks are done are so beautifully painful to read, and it's just so interesting watching them work through their trauma while running across country. So I know that it's not going to be for everyone, but damn, it hit all the right notes for me, and I adored it. For 2019, we have The Library of the Unwritten by AJ Hackworth. This is just everything I needed in a novel. There's queer representation, it's hilarious, it's bookish, it just hits. All of these, they just hit all the right notes when I needed to read them and when I read them. So it's so fun. This series is just brilliant. It does deal with a lot of serious conversations, but the overall lightness just really makes it so interesting and fun. And yeah, I adore this series. I really enjoyed getting to see different forms of representation, which I hadn't read a lot of at that point. And just realizing that I will probably end up being Claire, and I'm fine with that. For 2020, we have My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and oh lord, I am still in pain from this book. The emotional impact that I had on me when I read it was just so intense. I ended up spiraling like for 5 days after I finished reading this, and it was fine. I had great support, so it was all good. But it's dealing with grooming and the idea that a relationship you had in the past isn't the relationship that you thought it was, and in fact is toxic and abusive. So hit a lot of notes, hurt me deeply. There's one quote that still resonates with me to this day and causes me physical pain every time I think about it. And I'm so thankful that I read this because I didn't know I needed it, but I really did. Yeah, love that for me. For 2021, we have Malice by Heather Walter, and this was just the sapphic retelling of Sleeping Beauty that I didn't know I needed until I read it, and it became my personality. Like the past 3-4 books that I've mentioned and a couple more to go. So Malice is just a beautiful retelling of Sleeping Beauty and takes a twist. It's looking from the villain perspective, which sapphic, villain, origin story, fairy tale, just yes, I adored this and have not stopped screaming about it from the rooftops for a while. I didn't love Misrule as much as I was hoping to. I still really, really loved it, but it took a different turn and this is the perfection that I needed. For 2022, we have I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Again, this was my favorite book of last year. I just, made me reflect on a lot of things about childhood, teenage years, and the media that I've consumed in my life, and how I know nothing about these people. I know their characters well and feel like they're relatable characters because that's their job. But them as actual people, the parasocial relationship is completely fucked. And so reading Jeanette's story and just hearing her speak of her experiences was fucking heartbreaking, and I'm still not able to do the processing of feelings and emotions when it comes to this book, but I'm so thankful that a book like this is out in the world so we can start breaking down those barriers. I don't want it to come across that like, oh, if you're in the media you need to publish a biography so we know who the fuck you are. It's not that. It's more the fact that there are topics that aren't being discussed, which Jeanette talks about, and they need to be talked about more, whether that be from celebrities or laymen. It doesn't matter, but they need to be spoken about, and that's why I'm so appreciative that this exists. And for 2023, I read a children's book in January, which is The Brain Is Not Always Right by Scott Stewart. And this was beautiful. I really, really adored it. It really hit home with the fact that there are times that the logical side needs to switch off. It needs to just take a back seat and just follow your heart. And I think having this in picture book format really just is going to open the way for kids and for people that work with kids to be able to articulate themselves better. Also for adults to learn themselves and go, hey, yeah, like this is right. For me, I immediately think of doing a bujo because my brain's going, you don't have the skills, it's going to be ugly, you're gonna wreck all the spreads, so it's not worth actually pursuing it. But then it's something that I really want to do, like making it a reading journal, not a like fancy bujo, but just doing a reading journal that I can just jot things down, make memories in, and sort of just reflect on life. But I don't do it because I'm scared because my logical side won't shut the fuck up, whereas my creative heart's like, just do it. What's the worst that could happen? You muck up a spread, okay? It's not the end of the world. So this just really reaffirmed the things that I've been thinking on and wanting to do, and just reminded me to let my heart take the reins occasionally, because I could end up having a whole lot of fun, and I think that's important for any age to learn. But the fact that it's in picture format makes it so much more accessible for kids to learn this language and to be able to have these conversations with themselves at a younger age, because it's introduced to them younger. And I think I would have really valued having this as a kid. Seeing it as an adult has definitely changed the way I'm thinking once again. So those are the 28 books for 28 years from 1995 to 2023. I'm not one of those people that like worry about getting older. I actually quite enjoy it. So I'm very, very excited to see what this year holds. I am actually pre-filming this because we're spending the week before my birthday in Sydney and just doing a whole bunch of random shit. So I will have done that, but I don't know what that's going to be. Don't forget to tune in next Friday for my live video. I won't have one at 6 AM AEDT. It will be in the afternoon because that will be my channel anniversary. Stay tuned for that. But with that, I'm not going to hold these up because I nearly broke myself trying to take the thumbnail. Let me know in the comments, when's your birthday? And do you have a book that you know of that was published in your birth year that you absolutely love, or has had a meaningful impact on your reading life in some way, shape or form? If you like this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of this mess, feel free to subscribe. I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!